welcome to Dune Mondays, what's supposed to be the brand new series where I talk about Dune Prophecy every single Monday, the brand new show on HBO, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to make these videos every Monday. I don't know if I'm going to be able to follow along in this show because, if you read by the title, the show is weird. And it's also quite literally pointless so far, in my opinion. Dune Prophecy is a brand new prequel to the Denis Villeneuve Dune films that are based off the work of Frank Herbert. Of course, Frank Herbert wrote 6 Dune books, and Denis is sort of adapting those books. This is a prequel series that I believe is based off the work of Brian Herbert, who is the son of Frank Herbert, who, after the death of his father, continued writing just dozens and dozens of Dune books that are not very good. This series, I believe, has no involvement from Denis Villeneuve, and they're just kind of doing their own thing. This is Warner Brothers' way of trying to kind of capture that hype that's going on for Dune right now and release a series right off the hot back of Dune Part 2 and try to get people really, really interested in this universe and build a Star Wars-like franchise. Now, that is an idea that I'm a little bit mixed on. It's kind of like the idea of making Lord of the Rings into a massive franchise outside of just the stuff that the source material that's written. Because there's a large part of me that says maybe we should just let things be. Maybe we should just follow the work of the original creator. But then there's another part of me that's like, yeah, the Dune universe is crazy, it's huge, it's massive, it's expansive. Why not try to tell cool original stories there? And I was really hopeful of this show. I think it has a great cast with people like Emily Watson and Mark Strong. I think it has a really great sort of scope to it, this idea of telling this origin story of the Bene Gesserits and a lot of these great families in the Dune universe. I think the fact that it takes place 10,000 years before the events of the movies gives it a lot of room that it can't really affect the canon that much. I also think the trailer that we got, or the trailers leading up to this in the marketing campaign, were really good. It sold this as being sort of a continuation of that movie sort of tone, that extremely epic, dark, and alien vibe to this universe. After the first episode, though, unfortunately, I don't have much good to say about this show. I was really let down by this episode, as I found it to be kind of absent of all the things that make the Denis film so special, and many of the things that make Frank Herbert's writing so special, because you didn't know I'm a massive fan of his books and the book series of Dune, and to me this just felt like a waste. It felt pointless. But it does have its moments. One of the big things about this episode that works are the Bene Gesserits and Emily Watson, who plays sort of the leader of the Bene Gesserits. The episode starts with this very, very long exposition sequence, which of course is the worst way to start any show or movie, unless you're Fellowship of the Ring, of course. But it's sort of explaining the origins of the Bene Gesserits and how they sort of rise after the fall of the Machine Wars, this big, gigantic event that happened in the Dune universe, which explains why there's no, like, computers or AI machines. But there's a great sequence showing how she kind of crafted the Bene Gesserit church into what it is in the modern Dune universe, where it's just these kind of witches that are sort of manipulating the galaxy politically from behind the scenes. But then the show starts getting into its main sort of conflict of dealing with all these different political families and trying to become like the sort of Game of Thrones of space opera, and my main issue is once it gets into that stuff. So Mark Strong is playing the emperor of this universe, and he has a daughter who is supposed to be married to this other political figure, this major family, this 9-year-old boy who is the son of this big duke that Mark Strong is trying to get soldiers from, so it's kind of a political marriage, because Mark Strong is having problems on Arrakis, of course, of all places, and he needs to get more soldiers to go send there and help out on that planet, so he sets up this marriage, and his kids are just douchebags. His daughter wants this marriage for her own political reasons, and she's going to be joining the Bene Gesserits. And there's just a lot of stuff going on in this episode, but none of it is anywhere near as interesting as I think the writers thought it was going to be. The show really fails at getting you gripped into many of these characters and the political divides that are going on within them. And I think it's because they throw way too much information at you at once. Information that you don't really need, especially if you're already sort of akin to this universe. You don't need to know all the political ins and outs that are going on. You didn't need that gigantic exposition scene about the Bene Gesserits. So once the show actually does go away and it starts jumping from character to character to character, it becomes so less focused, and these characters are just so uninteresting that the show never vibes. The show is at its strongest when it's with the Bene Gesserits, it's with the church and all these witches and all the stuff that's going on there. That is when it's most interesting, but whenever it bounces to the Corrinos and it tries setting up the Harkonnen family and all the other stuff that's going on and this weird kind of thing that's going on with Arrakis, then why would anybody care about the Arrakis plot when we know 10,000 years from now is when the real Arrakis story happens? It's just very uninteresting, and it feels very almost, and I hate to use this word, just CW. A lot of the stuff that's going on is kind of cringy, the weird sexual relationship stuff that's happening. It just all feels so melodramatic, and it just doesn't work, in my opinion, so far. But one of the greatest sins of this show so far is that it just feels off when it comes to the vibe of what Dune is, at least this modern Dune that Denis Villeneuve has crafted. Dune itself, when it's become cinema, both in David Lynch, the unmade Dune movie that we almost got in the 90s, and of course the Denis film, is that it's kind of like an avenue of being this sort of alien-type artistic creation. You could make something that is so different from anything else being made cinematically. And I feel like if you were going to do Dune on TV, it should have been treated with that same sort of touch. That if we were going to do this on TV, it needs to be something visually, cinematically, and tone-wise different than anything you've ever seen on TV, because that is what Dune deserves to be. Instead, this ends up being definitely high budget, definitely some decent CGI at times, but very similar to something you'll see in, like, the Apple TV, the Foundation show, and many other, like, space opera TV shows you've gotten in the past. It doesn't feel like anything new. You could take the word Dune out of the title of this and just put something else, and it could really just be anything. And because of that, it almost feels cheap and just unworthy of the name of Dune, especially with all the work, the effort that Denis has put in to create this into the massive name and the massive franchise that it's become on the big screen. It also lacks score. I mean, there is a score in this show, and it's okay, but it's definitely not the Hans Zimmer score that just made every beat and every moment of Dune Part 1 and Part 2 so epic and just made the world feel alive, but yet again, very different than what our world is. Dune feels like it takes place in a very, very different reality, even though we're watching humans. And this show just completely misses that. And one of the main things, yet again, this was just kind of boring, man. I couldn't get latched on to anything that was going on here because I don't know, man. The characters were just not engaging at all, outside of Emily Watson's main Bene Gesserit sort of witch. Most of the characters I found to be extremely unlikable. The worlds just weren't that cool. I wasn't really digging any of the lore things. I do like the fact that the planet that the Corrinos are kind of living on is the planet that they'll eventually train their Sardaukar on, which is a cool little nod that they're still on that planet, and it's not really the hell world that you read it to be in the books, but it will eventually become that, I guess. But I don't know, man, this show just feels so cheap. I'm shocked that they were able to make it so fast after the release of Dune Part 2. They're really hopping on trying to make Dune into a mega franchise, but I just ask again, should it be? Because Dune is something so special, and Frank Herbert wrote 6 really great books, and some of those books are crazy and maybe can't be adapted to the screen, but maybe we should just allow this to be a trilogy. Once Denis makes the final film, just allow it to live as 3 films that we all loved, and we don't have to revisit some universes. I understand money, right? If there's money to be made, god dang it, man, they're gonna go make that money. These studios will hop on the opportunity to make that quick buck, but maybe in a perfect world, we would just sit there and say, do we need Dune Prophecy? And I think the answer is probably no, we don't. So why does this exist? And granted, yet again, I should be giving it the benefit of the doubt. This is only 1 episode, and I will be watching episode 2, and 3, and 4, and 5, and trying to get through this whole series, and maybe at some point it'll click to me, and I'll go, wow, I was so wrong when I made that first video about the show, and I should have known better, because this is an amazing show, and I hope to God they prove me wrong, because HBO and Max, they are very good at making television. I mean, they just finished up The Penguin, which is absolutely spectacular. It's a show that maybe I would have said a month ago was not needed, but in my opinion, it ended up justifying its own existence. Maybe this will do the same thing, but so far into this first episode, I just feel kind of empty about this, and I feel let down and disappointed, and I feel almost like it's watering down the name of Dune after Denis has worked so hard to build it up and gotten it to a point where it could be considered to win Best Picture at the Oscars, but now we have this Dune show that I don't think anybody's really going to care about if it continues like this. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Let me know what you guys think of the show down below. Make sure to like this video, subscribe for more. I will try to be back next Monday talking about this show, but if it keeps going this way, I don't know if I can continue making videos on it outside of one big review video. But I don't know, that's it. Please like this video, subscribe for more, turn on notifications. I'll see you in the next one.